Madam Speaker, colleague parliamentarians, fellow citizens of Dominica, on behalf of the leadership and members of the United Workers' Party Team Dominica, the parliamentary opposition of Dominica, it is my duty to respond to the 2017-2018 budget statement of the Dominica Labour Party government, delivered by the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance less than 22 hours ago on the 27th of July, 2017. Madam Speaker, I set my counter, my stopwatch, on my phone yesterday when the Prime Minister started, and I stopped it when it ended. And the stopwatch told me 2 hours and 2 minutes. I note that your count was an hour and 56 minutes, and that's what I'm reduced to. This new normal, Madam Speaker, this outrageous limitation of time to respond to a budget statement prepared over a number of months with input from an army of public officers under the watch of the largest cabinet in the OECS, confirms the hostility to Parliament's oversight responsibility for public finances that has become the modus operandi of this administration. In response to its 17-year record of consistently underperforming in managing the economy of this country, we stand on our commitment to develop and grow a model green economy that rewards enterprise, that puts our people to work for decent wages, that gives a fair chance to all and secures our place in the global trade of goods and services. For 17 long years, Madam Speaker, through budget after budget, this administration has spent more and more of the people's money on making people poorer, destroying their quality of life, and rendering them more and more incapable of making their own money, being their own people, taking care of their families, and living lives of dignity. It's time for change. In recent years, we have lamented the enduring obsession with the same old failed policies of exclusion, secrecy, and petty political partisanship that have made a complete mockery of the parliamentary oversight responsibility for the preparation of the national budget and the management of public finances. We have asked for the involvement of the parliamentary opposition at stages in the budget preparation cycle where it can meaningfully contribute to the annual revenue and expenditure planning exercise. We have been ignored, except for that one occasion when we were disrespectfully invited today for tomorrow to listen to a panel of ruling party supporters in a so-called consultation on funding economic activities. We declined the participation in the blatant partisan charade designed by the $100,000 per month US-based spin doctors to score cheap political points. In 2015, in 2016, the budget response of the parliamentary opposition went to great lengths to demonstrate why the budgets of those years and the budgets of the 14 previous years lacked credibility. We made the case that these Labour Party budgets are not products of an effectively anchored bipartisan parliamentary mechanism to decide on and fund the growth and development priorities of Dominica. We advised against the dangers of driving Dominica Labour Party paramountcy to supersede the authority of our nation's highest decision-making body for partisan purposes, like having Parliament routinely rubber stamp approval of budgets that are not designed to and therefore cannot serve as tools to deliver the growth and development fundamentals of the Commonwealth of Dominica.
Just 1 minute. Somebody is moving about the chamber. Can the person just stay one place, please? I find it very distracting.
The 2017-2018 budget, presented on a platform of all-time high revenues from the sale of passports, falls well short of showing how government will prioritize and achieve its annual and multi-annual objectives in a way that will impact the economy as a whole by placing it on a path of faster, higher growth, the undisputed major national development challenge of the last 2 decades. The presenter of the budget, Madam Speaker, says he's excited about it, and we wonder why. Where's the excitement in same old, same old? Where is the excitement in haphazard spending that will only lead to stagnation and further decline in the growth engines of agriculture, tourism, light manufacturing, renewable energy, and the cultural industries? Where is the excitement in presiding over increased joblessness, in managing the widening and deepening poverty? Where is the excitement in using more and more of the people's money on the increasingly empty promises of a better life? This budget, Madam Speaker, is about protecting the selfish interests of the few who make merry in the Dominica that is doing very well, while the rest of us, in the other Dominica that has been made critically unwell, endure the sweltering heat of a living hell. The budget is not clear. It is not fair. It is unhinged from the realities of what people really need, because it is the work of a regime that simply will not take heed. More of the same has not worked, cannot work, and will not work. Change is a must. In the budget formulation process under the United Workers' Party Team Dominica, we will present budget outlook and budget strategy papers for better public understanding of the fiscal strategy driving the revenue and expenditure allocations. We will enact fiscal responsibility legislation, establishing principles of responsible fiscal management and transparency. We will operate with rules that support fiscal sustainability, anchor the formulation of the annual budget and its execution, and provide a correction mechanism after deviations. We will issue medium-term expenditure framework guidelines. We will use sector working groups and ministerial public expenditure reviews to bring together input from ministers, from parliamentarians, from public officials, from the private sector, from civil society organizations, and private citizens. We will engage a finance committee of Parliament, the Budget Office, and sector hearings to consider these contributions and transform them into action-oriented proposals for the betterment of Dominica. We will engage an Estimates or Finance Committee of Parliament to review and approve the estimates of revenue and expenditure. We will restrict the use of contingency warrants used to authorize unbudgeted spending and include in the budget a contingency reserve for unforeseen or emergency spending. We will improve the capital budgeting process with the introduction of a performance budgeting program across all government departments by linking budget allocations to economic and social priorities and enacting results-based budgeting. We will promote trust among citizens that government is listening and acting on their concerns, has a plan for achieving worthwhile objectives, and will use the available resources effectively, efficiently, and in a sustainable manner. Under the watch of a UWP government, once Parliament approves the budget, allocations will be effectively implemented by the ministries and agencies of government to secure the intended development benefits. Revenue collection and spending, as authorized in the budget, will be subjected to proper oversight throughout the year by a properly empowered Public Accounts Committee, the Audit Department, the Budget Office, and line ministries as appropriate. We will bring an end, Madam Speaker, to the pigeonholing of the Public Accounts Committee into a primary concern with audited reports on government finances and ensure that it embraces the discipline of oversight in real time. We will amend the relevant standing orders of this House to ensure that the work of this important standing committee of Parliament is no longer exclusively dependent on reports from the Director of Audit, which are usually backlogged 3 to 4 years. In other words, under our watch, the Public Accounts Committee will be no longer condemned to oversight of history, while live revenue and expenditure performance goes unchecked. A UWP government will discontinue the practice of silence on the implementation of budget allocations after approval by Parliament. Under our watch, there will be periodic budget performance reviews that allow Parliament to take note of the trend of overall collection and spending and prepare Cabinet to reassess budget alignment with fiscal objectives and development priorities. We will have budget execution reports, including in-year and audited year-end reports designed to yield useful improvement messages on performance and value for money. The parliamentary budget oversight focus, Madam Speaker, under our watch will be on budgetary governance. The processes, the laws, the structures and institutions that ensure the budgeting system effectively meets these requirements. We will give Dominica what this administration has been unable to deliver for more than 17 years, an integrated budget formulation system and monitoring procedure that is coherent and consistent across all governance areas in the public interest. Madam Speaker, after 17 years of ignoring the necessity of good, transparent, and accountable governance, it is finally admitted in the budget statement of yesterday that, quote, our transformation requires a new mode of governance, governance that is more consultative and able to quickly identify challenges and solutions, end of quote. This so-called new mode of governance, however, described in the context of our democratic traditions and aspirations, begins with elections with integrity. Free and fair elections that honestly and accurately reflect the free will of the people in the choice of a government of the people, by the people, for the people. A government whose members accept that in democracies, the people elect government, the people monitor government, the people question government, the people criticize government, the people praise government, the people counsel government, and the people change government without let and without hindrance. The fact of unfair elections has been confirmed by the Commonwealth Observer Mission following the December 24th general elections in Dominica. The mission concluded that the election was not fair because of, quote, the lack of balance and in some cases lack of professionalism of the media, the absence of campaign finance regulations, and the resultant lack of transparency on financing, coupled with the exponentially increased expense associated with campaigning. Multiple instances of cheating and bribery, including the transportation of electors to the island to vote, and the apparent abuses of incumbency, including a lack of impartiality in the provision of public services, end of quote. Since 2005, Madam Speaker, the United Workers' Party has been advocating for electoral reform along the lines of improvement recommendations in post-election reports from the Chief Elections Officer, from the observer missions, from the CARICOM and the OAS. The Electoral Commission, Madam Speaker, acting in its own deliberate judgment, decided to pursue much needed reform of the electoral process in order to effectively protect it from undue influence, from bribery, voter fraud, and corrupt election practices. Since that decision by the Independent Electoral Commission, as mandated by the Constitution, the Commission has conducted 2 general elections in 2009 and 2014. Under the same electoral system it determined is in need of reform. There has been growing public concern, Madam Speaker, over the failure to implement the reforms, especially given the abuses and corrupt practices that have been observed in the last few general elections, especially the violations of voter eligibility, bribery, and treating as per the provisions in our existing laws. On this occasion of the budget presentation of 2017-2018, we are again requesting urgent action and adequate funding to complete the process of electoral reform that the Commission decided on in the public interest more than 6 years ago. And we are opposed, completely opposed, to the reform agenda of the Dominica Labour Party government, as made known to us in a recent sitting of the Parliament, which seeks to legitimize bribery and treating and introduce overseas registration of voters. For the avoidance of doubt, the key elements of electoral reform for free and fair elections with integrity, for which we urge adequate budgetary resources, are: 1, an accurate register of voters, meaning a total re-registration of all eligible voters on the basis of which a new register of voters will be issued. Cleaning the list of electors is a critical component of electoral reform. A bloated list that includes, despite prohibitions in law to the contrary, the names of dead people, people living outside of Dominica for over 5 years, is and will continue to be used to corrupt the voting process. The opposition believes that a total re-registration is the best way to clean the list. This has successfully been done in neighboring islands over relatively short periods of 6 months or less. All registrations must be done by the Commission exclusively in Dominica and must be subject to the existing residency criteria for voter registration. Voter identification cards. We want picture ID cards for all eligible voters on the new register of voters, who will be obligated to use the cards as identification during elections. All ID cards for voting must be issued by Commission exclusively in Dominica. In terms of the rule of our election laws, we want enforcement of the provisions in our laws against bribery, against treating, against personation, against illegal voting, and election offenses in general. We use this occasion to urge the Commission to constrain whoever it may concern to honor the rule of our electoral laws and to guard against any attempt to amend specific provisions of these laws for the purposes of legitimizing bribery, treating, and ineligible voting practices that are increasingly corrupting the electoral process. Madam Speaker, in electoral reform, for which we seek adequate funding for the work of the Commission in that regard, we are concerned with voting by electors living overseas. These voters, these citizens of Dominica, need lawful facilitation. We need lawful facilitation of registered eligible voters living overseas to vote in general elections in Dominica. The practice of any political party paying millions of dollars from undisclosed sources to transport thousands of voters from various overseas locations to vote is illegal, it's corrupt, and it represents a dangerous obstacle to free and fair elections. We need as well fair access for the opposition to the media, to the news and current affairs programs of all state-owned, state-operated, or state-controlled media. And we need campaign finance reform to ensure that at the very least, the declarations of campaign contributions and election campaign spending by any political party of no more than 30 EC dollars per registered voter per election. Madam Speaker, since 2005, the Dominica economy has struggled to maintain a growth rate of less than 1% on average, well below the economic performances in the rest of the region, and significantly less than the 5 to 7% required to generate sustained employment and to reduce the growing incidence of poverty on the island. Repeated policy action in budget after budget presented by this administration have failed to address economic growth and Dominica's growing employment problems, with the resultant social ills which continue to plague our country. Indeed, Madam Speaker, the Dominican economy, following years of neglect by this administration and a decided lack of economic policy direction, continues to drift downwards, even threatening to erase the gains that were made under the Dominican Freedom Party and the United Workers' Party. A direct consequence of this neglect is the growing numbers of our citizens requiring direct government assistance, rapidly rising unemployment, and increasing and persistent poverty island-wide. It is clear that attempts at continuing the National Employment Program, which was an election gimmick in any event, has done little to alleviate the anxiety of the hundreds of young people across this country who are unable to find meaningful and long-term employment. Opportunities within the agriculture sector, which for years provided a stable and consistent income to the majority of the rural population, have slowly dried up as government mistakenly withdrew its support and failed in its effort in spite of repeated promises to secure markets within the region. Other opportunities to spur growth, such as within the private and tourism sectors, have met with a similar fate. It is clear that this administration has failed spectacularly in generating growth and taking care of the well-being and economic needs of the majority of the citizens. The government's insistence on, if not passport revenue, then what, demonstrates a reckless disregard for safeguarding and improving traditional revenue streams, which are critical in maintaining the sustainability of the government revenue. The average Dominican understands that revenues from the Citizenship by Investment program are at best transitory and will someday come to an end. That is why it is more than perplexing that this government continues to fail to address revenue-generating efforts operating as though the economy is on remote control and will somehow set itself right. Through this neglect of the economy, we have witnessed the persistent decline of traditional tax revenues, and in most cases, stagnation. One does not need to understand or even appreciate economics to know that if you fail to promote growth, that ultimately your revenue streams will dry up, and with it, your ability to continue government programs and to take care of public servants and the rest of the citizenry. Not only is VAT on the decline, but so too is grant revenue, which has fallen to levels never witnessed before in this country, as our traditional friends appear to be distancing themselves from reckless spending and a failure to put economic policies to safeguard domestic revenue generation in place. On the expenditure side, Madam Speaker, wages and salaries combined continue to take the lion's share of the current spending, reflecting government's inability to encourage private sector-led growth, which could assist in easing the unemployment situation. Consequently, after paying public servants, there is very little revenue left over. That has been the case. We're seeing a new situation right now with the windfall revenues of the past couple of years. The government's capital expenditure program continues to be haphazard, to lack focus, and fails to adequately address the needs of agriculture and other income-generating sectors. The majority of cases, spending has been wasteful, lacking proper oversight, and have raised serious issues of this government's procurement practices, such as issuing no-bid contracts, basically granting contracts to friends and supporters in breach of procurement laws and in breach of best practice.
Part needs to be withdrawn, eh?
Withdrawn.
Good.
But let's be clear, Madam Speaker. The only sensible approach to rescuing this country, which not surprisingly continues to elude the members on the other side, is a focus on policies which are aimed at stimulating economic growth, reducing the level of unemployment and poverty, improving budget performance, including regulating procurement practices, and generating non-CBI revenue in the near to medium term. This must be complemented with the establishment of key performance indicators, such as a targeted growth rate of 5 to 7% per annum, annual increase in VAT revenues and other tax and non-tax revenues of at least 15%, and maintaining a current fiscal surplus somewhere between 2 and 6% of GDP on an ongoing basis. This year's budget, Madam Speaker, surfaces against the backdrop of some very interesting disclosures in the IMF's March 2017 Article 4 consultation on Dominica. Quote, despite high citizenship by investment revenues, the fiscal outlook has deteriorated largely due to lower projected grant revenues, a downward revision in the projected yields of the fiscal consolidation measures, the increase in social transfers, and the reduction of the corporate income tax rate in January 2017. As a result, the use of government deposits to cover financing needs would be necessary to reach the regional debt target of 60% of GDP by 2030 without increasing the fiscal consolidation effort above the commitments of the rapid credit facility disbursement. Quote again, given the risks to the fiscal outlook, the authorities should explore contingent fiscal consolidation measures such as developing a formal tax incentive policy for private investment, preparing a revenue-enhancing tax reform plan, and improving spending efficiency through better targeting and means testing of social programs. enhancing budget preparation execution processes, further improving the integrity of the CBI program, and considering the adoption of fiscal responsibility legislation. Despite ample liquidity, the IMF continues. Banks' credit to the private sector remains weak as a result of insufficient bankable projects, persisting low profitability, and high non-performing loans. And now, Madam Speaker, let's go to a few classic examples of IMF stock record recommendations for the Dominica economy that Dominicans have heard over and over again during the past 17 years. Quote, improving the conditions for private investment, especially for export activities, is the key to accelerating growth. Efforts should therefore focus on the removal of costs and barriers that affect investment decisions and profitability. Specifically, the government should enhance labor market legislation and better target education programs in order to improve labor productivity and mobility across the sectors. Reduce the cost of doing business, especially in terms of resolving insolvency, registering property, paying taxes, and obtaining construction permits. Explore the potential for expansion and further diversification of tourism markets, enhance the resilience of public infrastructure to natural disasters, and advance in the development of geothermal generation of electricity. Nothing new, it's all old. We've heard it year after year in Article 4 reports. But these recommendations for an economy managed by a group of people, which according to the Prime Minister, should be, quote, unafraid to regularly expose itself to independent expert scrutiny, are contained in a press statement issued by the mission chief at the end of the Article 4 consultation in March of 2017. But 4 months later, the full Article 4 report is yet to be published. Instead, the IMF is featuring on its website a June 29, 2017 update which says, quote, on May 12, 2017, 2 months ago, the Executive Board of the International Monetary Fund, IMF, concluded the consideration of the Article 4 consultation with Dominica and considered and endorsed the staff appraisal without a meeting. Under the Article 4 Articles of Agreement, the IMF has a mandate to exercise surveillance over the economic, financial, and exchange rate policies of its members in order to ensure the effective operation of the international monetary system. The board reviews are subsequently summarized and transmitted to the country authorities. Publication of the staff report will be done subsequently. I presume, Madam Speaker, the authorities in Dominica have this Article 4 report, but of course it's their prerogative to decide if and when to reduce it. The budget statement confirms that agriculture grew by 9.9% in 2016-2017, following a downturn of 15.1% in 2015-2016, which means the sector is still 5.2% behind where it used to be 2 years ago. Tourism nosedived this year 12.8% in 2016-2017, following a 10.9% decline in 2015-2016. In other words, the last 2 years have seen a 23.7% reversal in the growth fortunes for this key economic growth engine. Overall, the government's revenue increased by 247 million, that's the recurrent revenue, from 635.4 million in 2015-2016 to 882.4 million in 2016-2017. While traditional tax revenues remained flat, Madam Speaker, revenues from the sale of passports moved year on year from 267.5 million to 506.9 million, an increase of 239.4 million. The revenue projection for 2017-2018 is 786.5 million, with $400 million expected to come from the sale of passports. So, Madam Speaker, government has now shifted its main revenue focus from taxes to the sale of passports, which is forecast to contribute 51% of the recurrent revenue in this financial year. Now, Madam Speaker, next month, Dominica will celebrate its 26th birthday as a player in the global passport selling industry, which has an estimated sales volume of $5 billion. 14 of Dominica's 26 passport selling years have been under the watch of the current Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. The so-called real estate option of the CBI, Madam Speaker, is really the Greystone-Laya River model introduced under the Dominica Freedom Party, and the cash option, under which revenues from the sale of passports come into the Treasury, is the re-engineered economic citizenship model introduced by the United Workers' Party. There has been no innovation. The dramatic increase in passport sale volumes over the past 2 budget cycles is driven mainly by, one, the increased demand for second passports that work better than those of certain countries, particularly in Asia and the Arab world, and two, the fact that Dominica offers the cheapest passport on the global market. Now, Madam Speaker, is the money from passport sales current revenue or is it capital revenue? Because it seems to some of us on this side that the classification of CBI revenue as current revenue is false accounting. Whether we call it investment or sale of passport, which is what the CBI is, the money is capital revenue. It is money received for the sale of national assets, that is the passports, national heritage or people's rights. It is in the same category as money received when government sells houses or land or sells off other investments as in shares in the National Bank. Correcting this classification changes the entire financial picture of the budget. The current revenue surplus is erased and all the other financial ratios are impacted on negatively. But they're in government so they can classify how they want. Now, throughout the 26-year period of passport sales, Madam Speaker, Dominica has seen a steady growth in the number of citizens, but no real investment in economic activity to secure sustainable jobs and national income. 3 years ago, in 2014-2015, Dominica picked up $23 million from passport sales. It was a shortfall of $57 million on the budget of $80 million. 1 year later, in the official estimates, the government reported passport revenues of $99 million, $76 million above the prior year, and $29 million above the budget. But according to the Prime Minister's 2016 budget statement, the actual amount received from passport sales in 2015-2016 was $279.8 million. What this meant, as I pointed out in the budget debate of last year, is that the passport revenue of the Commonwealth of Dominica was underreported by $180.8 million in the official estimates that the Parliament approved. I made the point in response to the 2016 budget statement that government was holding passport revenues outside of the consolidated fund in breach of the Constitution. And you remember, Madam Speaker, the pretense on the other side was that we didn't know what we were talking about. But lo and behold, we see in this year's estimates a $168.5 million correction from $99 million to $267.5 million in the actual passport revenue for 2015-2016. The only problem with that, Madam Speaker, is according to the Prime Minister, the actual receipts from passport sales in 2015-2016 amounted to $279.8 million. He told us inflows into the National Bank were $118 million, inflows into the Royal Bank were $161.8 million for the financial year. That amounts to $279 million, not $267.5 million. Where is the difference of $12.3 million? We want to know. Madam Speaker, for the budget year 2014-2015, which by the way was a deficit year, government projected that it received and spent $25 million of passport money. At June 30th, 2015, according to the Finance Minister, government had a passport money bank balance of $15.4 million. Yet, that amount seemed to vanish when the $25 million 2014-2015 passport sales projection became an actual of $23 million in the 2015-2016 estimates. How does the government account for the passport money bank balance of $15.4 million at June 30th, 2015, which was not used to correct the passport money inflow in the estimates of 2015-2016? Now, Madam Speaker, our passport selling successes confront us with grave dangers and severe challenges. We can fool ourselves all we want about everything being hunky-dory, but reality is what reality is. Dominica is no longer the country contained within the boundaries of this Isle of Beauty. According to the Prime Minister, and I quote, "In Europe, Asia, and the Arab world, there are thousands of individuals who are proud and honored to proclaim their citizenship of this country," end of quote. Citizenship that they have purchased for ease of travel. How many thousands exactly? What is the rate of our population increase as a result of the sale of passports? And Madam Speaker, now, for example, in the interest of protecting the access into the United States of America that citizens of Dominica have traditionally enjoyed for a variety of human advancement purposes, we are challenged to ensure on-time and complete compliance with new U.S. information sharing requirements in support of visa vetting, border and immigration applications announced earlier this month. Now, Madam Speaker, in light of this government's enduring practice of placing diplomatic passports in the hands of persons who end up on the wrong side of the law in their separate territories, and its increasing reliance on selling Dominican citizenship to buyers in terrorist hotspots of the world, we are concerned with Dominica's ability to comply with the new anti-terrorism protocols in general, and in particular, those requiring countries to, 1, make available information, including biographic and biometric data on individuals it knows or has reasonable grounds to believe are terrorists, including foreign terrorist fighters, through appropriate bilateral or multilateral channels, and 2, take measures to ensure that they are not and do not have the potential to become a terrorist safe haven. Madam Speaker, in the circumstances of citizens of Dominica resident in Dominica, we have a right to know the names and the countries of origin of all citizens by passport purchase who have not lived in Dominica. We expect that a full listing of this category of citizens will be published immediately for better public knowledge and understanding of the emerging global security challenges confronting our nation. The purchasers of Dominican citizenship resident in distant land will no doubt be applying for visas seeking entry into the United States. As such, the government of Dominica now will be responsible not only for providing criminal record information and other information on these applicants, but also for the assurance that this nation, whose citizens include passport buyers from known terrorist trouble spots, is not and does not have the potential to become a safe haven for terrorists. We have warned before about the dangers posed by the reckless mismanagement of government's passport selling program for short-term financial gain, the severe implications of which are once again staring us straight in the face. We have also warned, because it's our duty to do so, about our diplomatic passports ending up in the hands of nefarious characters. The continuation of these behaviors that compromise the global security architecture against terrorism will trigger a failure to comply with the new U.S. visa vetting protocols, which will mean denial of access to the U.S. for thousands of Dominicans living in their homeland. We are therefore urging the government to come clean with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in response to these critical public interest questions. Number one, is Dominica now on the U.S. list of countries that do not comply with the new protocols? If not, is Dominica on the list of countries that are not likely to be in compliance with the new protocols by the expiration of the deadline? If Dominica is on either list, as per question 1 above, what is the plan for corrective action? In any event, what is the time frame for compliance with the new U.S. information sharing requirements in support of visa vetting, border, and immigration applications? Madam Speaker, the parliamentary opposition stands ready to assist in ensuring our country meets its obligations under the new U.S. travel security protocols. Accordingly, we look forward to receiving at the earliest convenience a copy of the correspondence from this administration to the government of the United States of America on behalf of the people of Dominica, confirming our country's current status. Madam Speaker, another hot-button issue on our plate as a result of our passport selling program goes by the name of de-risking. De-risking is the termination of or the restriction of business relationships to avoid risk-related money laundering and terrorist financing, according to a definition by the Financial Action Task Force, which is an independent intergovernmental body that develops and promotes policies to protect the global financial system against these threats. De-risking has entered the global financial picture, Madam Speaker, because international financial institutions are being subjected to regulatory censure for operational deficiencies in dealing with anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing responsibilities. Penalties and fines have increased, and as a result, financial institutions have looked for ways to address these deficiencies. One of these ways is to terminate business relationships with certain businesses and regions considered to be high risk. Madam Speaker, here in Dominica, a government passport money account was de-risked from the fold of the Royal Bank of Canada. The Prime Minister and Minister of Finance confirmed that the account was closed, but he told this Parliament the local branch of the international chain that operates under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Finance did not say why the account was closed. Quote, "The Royal Bank of Canada chose not to maintain a government account for CBI as of 20th February 2017. The Royal Bank of Canada did not state a specific reason for not being able to maintain the account. The balance of funds as of 20th February 2017 was EC 28,067,074 cents, and the funds have been lodged at the National Bank of Dominica," end of quote. It's clear to many of us, ordinary, right-thinking Dominicans, that the Royal Bank of Dominica closed the government's passport money account. The Royal Bank of Canada closed the government's passport money account because it no longer wished to take the risk of handling suspect funds from questionable sources that could compromise its anti-money laundering and anti-terrorism financing compliance responsibilities. In Dominica as well, in 2017, Madam Speaker, certain lawyers have had their banking activities restricted with the closure of their client accounts at local branches of international banks. There have also been disturbing public disclosures that certain high-profile lawyers may have used their client accounts to facilitate corrupt international finance transactions. De-risking is serious business. Dominica, like most Caribbean countries, is import-dependent. Globalization and technology allow countries to conduct business despite the miles between them. International correspondent banks facilitate international transactions by providing access to payment and financial systems. These transactions, which include remittances through MoneyGram and Western Union, credit card payments, foreign direct investments, and international trade in goods and services, contribute significantly to Dominica's growth and development. Therefore, the loss of these relationships, Madam Speaker, will create huge problems for the region as local respondent banks would no longer be able to conduct international transactions on behalf of their customers. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, trade facilitation will be severely affected since we would be unable to import essential basic goods such as food and medicine, which could ultimately destabilize the economy. De-risking has already affected certain classes of business, customers, and jurisdictions throughout the Caribbean. One correspondent bank has ceased to conduct business with currency exchange outfits and businesses that handle money transfers. De-risking has generated a lot of discussion among international and regional finance institutions, including Caribbean central banks, the Financial Stability Board, FSB, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, as well as CARICOM, to reach an understanding of the complexity and multidimensional nature of de-risking. Notwithstanding, the behavior of certain governments have dampened the urgency expressed by the above-mentioned stakeholders. The FSB has proposed a 4-point plan to a further examination of the issue, clarification of regulatory expectations, capacity building in jurisdictions where respondent banks are affected, and the strengthening of local tools for correspondent banks to perform due diligence checks. Now, Madam Speaker, although CARICOM is fully committed to the international financial reforms and has embraced the FSB's 4-point plan for addressing de-risking, the individual governments of CARICOM have been selective in allowing respondent banks and correspondent banks to perform due diligence checks in keeping with the said 4-point plan. At the most recent meeting in July, the CARICOM heads of government agreed on a new approach for addressing the problem. The CARICOM Committee of Finance Ministers proposed the establishment of a global forum in the Caribbean to bring the various stakeholders together, including correspondent banks, respondent banks, regulators, policymakers, and non-government organizations that have been adversely affected by de-risking. But, Madam Speaker, this plan will only receive the attention it deserves if the governments and stakeholders actually alter their behavior to suit the new dispensation. Otherwise, correspondent banks are not going to relent on de-risking. We're dealing here with the concern that they are band-aid. We're dealing with band-aid solutions to a systemic problem that requires full accountability, full transparency at a national level in respect of all the processes and the programs that the international community has highlighted with an above-average risk. There was a CARICOM Central Bank Governor's Report, Technical Working Group report. That technical working group was established to document and to analyze the impact of de-risking strategies on financial systems. And this group prepared a background paper on the issue of de-risking, which was recently published by the Caribbean Center for Money and Finance. In the meantime, some regional banks have already received official notification of the imminent termination of their relationship with correspondent banks. Most of the affected banks have already begun establishing new relationships with other international banks. However, more international banks may eventually choose to de-risk rather than expose themselves to the possibility of being fined or otherwise penalized. It is therefore incumbent, Madam Speaker, that at national level, government and other stakeholders understand that FDI inflows, irrespective of source, cannot bolster a budget or provide the injection to national development if the funds will not be accommodated through the formal financial system. We cannot wish de-risking away, and it is not going to disappear because we refuse to accept that question marks in the global banking industry about sources of funds for the purchase of our main revenue earner are real and can only be successfully addressed with enlightened, honest governance conduct. Dominica is up against a severe crisis of confidence because of the actions and associations of this administration with
Please,
questionable
please
characters.
withdraw. You can't impute directly improper motive like this.
I am stating a fact,
I am asking
not
you
imputing a motive.
to withdraw.
Withdrawn.
Good. Let's keep it like that, please.
This administration, Madam Speaker, has persisted with the practice of placing diplomatic passports and diplomatic immunity in the hands of
The member.
A list includes, Madam Speaker, but it is not limited to Alison Matuke.
The member. You don't seem to be hearing me. You are imputing improper motive.
Madam Speaker, Alison Madueke, the former Nigerian Oil Resources Minister, received a Dominica diplomatic passport in May.
Just one moment. To what he said prior to that this is what the government did. He is implying that the government did this deliberately, knowing all of this before. The member has to temper what he's saying in such a manner as not to impute improper motive. What he's saying may well be true. I'm not aware of either way. But he predicated what he said by saying the government did all this, implying that the government did all of this deliberately. So he has to be careful what he says. I speak English, I understand English, and I know the member is very well versed in English as well. So can we repeat what you said without imputing improper motive, please? Good.
Best, Madam Speaker. I'm saying that it is true and factual that in May of 2015, Alison Madueke, the former Nigerian Oil Resources Minister, received a diplomatic passport from the Commonwealth of Dominica. I'm also saying, Madam Speaker, it is true and factual that Alison Madueke now finds herself facing the courts in Nigeria, in England, and in the United States on charges of bribery, money laundering, and misappropriation of public money. It is also true that Francesco Corallo was the holder of a Dominica diplomatic passport, and he's now facing the court in Italy on fraud, bribery, and racketeering charges. It is also true and factual that Ali Reza Monfared is facing the court in Iran in connection with the biggest embezzlement scandal in Iranian history. He, in 2015, March of 2015, received a Dominica diplomatic passport, which we understand was subsequently revoked. And, Madam Speaker, we also have the case of NG Lapseng, convicted yesterday in New York for bribery of United Nations officials. He used to be, was, or is the holder of a Dominica diplomatic passport. And when the country's name gets linked to these kinds of characters and the activities that they're known for through the courts of the international community.
That's where it gets sticky. That's where it gets sticky. All
I haven't
what you
said
said
anybody.
before, that's fine.
I've said the country's name, Madam Speaker.
Okay, so be
Me too.
very careful.
All of us.
Okay?
And, Madam Speaker.
And I'm warning the member, you know it's going to come back. Because if you say it, members will bring back history. But there you go.
Madam Speaker, I only ask you to consider that you were very efficient in constraining me from saying what I wanted to say, and having regard to that, to be equally efficient when the other side indulges in fake news and spurious allegations.
take it to mean that you might well be giving fake news, because that is what I'm
Absolutely not,
gathering from
ma'am.
that.
Madam Speaker, there is nothing fake about the
No, but you see, it's the way you say it. It's the way you say it. You're saying the same way you stopped me when I'm doing this. I hope you stop them when they do their fake news. So I am inverting. I'm including too. So you see, this is the trap people fall into. You know.
The defenders and apologists, Madam Speaker, they can jump high. I said the defenders and apologists of this administration can jump high, they can jump low. The decent leaders of the civilized world have their concerns, and the consequences, the risking, the banking, denial of access to the US and all will be severe. Madam Speaker, I want to take a look now at the $350 million earmarked for capital works, capital spending in 2017-2018. Madam Speaker, there's an amount of $5.4 million for the Ministry of Justice, Immigration, and National Security. And I'm not sure what drives these numbers, what priorities are considered when these numbers are put together, against what plan is this money being spent and so on. But the court, for example, the High Court, has a lot of backlog. And I'm wondering whether in here there's any provision to, in some way, shape, or form, expand the capability of the court, get some new judges and so on to deal with what is a workload on judges in the High Court that they are unable to comfortably manage at this time. In terms of trade, energy, and employment, I see an amount here for $36.5 million. The NEP has $8 million of that, and there's a domestic geothermal plant that is supposed to cost $23 million. But yesterday, the Prime Minister went to great lengths to outline a funding package for geothermal, and as he was going through it, I was adding, I came close to $130 million that had been put aside for this geothermal initiative. And I'm wondering, we've had so many stops and starts where that is concerned. And I'm sure the Minister of Trade, Energy, and Employment will address it at length in his presentation. But it doesn't give us any level of comfort to hear all these numbers being thrown out again, because the government has money, so they throw in money after different things. But in terms of what the expectations are, in terms of what the delivery is going to be, no one knows. We have an amount of $5 million, the public support program in the Prime Minister's office. This happens again and again every year, where the Prime Minister comes as though he's learning nothing about a program that is dear to his heart. He puts $5 million, and then it ends up through supplementary appropriations to be double that. So, for example, the revised estimate for this year, for 2016-2017, is $11.5 million, but he's budgeting down again to $5 million. And I'm wondering, Madam Speaker, if a time comes when consideration is entered into as to whether we're making progress with the number of people year on year that are forced to depend more and more on handouts for the government. How can we say the economy is doing well and people are finding employment, people are doing well for themselves, when every year, more and more, the level of dependency on handouts from ministers increases? We have a question, we have the Ministry of Finance, a consultancy last year for $1.6 million on the international airport. But yesterday the Prime Minister told us he set up a fund. He's put $10 million of CBI money in it to capitalize it, and then he's going to put $5 million every year. But I'm every month. And then I'm asking myself, but what did you learn from the $1.6 million study? $1.6 million, a consultancy was done on an international airport for $1.6 million. No disclosure on what the consultancy revealed or reported, but a new round of promises that are not hinged to anything, and no indication where the airport is going to be. Is the airport going to be? $1.6 million in a consultancy. You're not hearing where the airport is going to be. Madam Speaker, the same Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Finance has indicated a loan of the equivalent of $2 million was made available to Dominica Coconut Products to refloat the organization down there. Again, the terms of the loan have not been disclosed. We don't know whether it's interest-free or whether it's going to be paid now, whether it's a moratorium, etc. But the loan is given, and hopefully, by the end of this year, as the plan suggests, because there's a plan now, and there's been an indication that by the end of this year, people will get into employment down there, which is a good thing. Madam Speaker, agriculture and fisheries, $22.7 million. In that amount, $3.2 million for banana and plantain development of that subsector. But in the same page, Madam Speaker, there's an indication that Black Sigatoka management has been concluded. They're done with that. They finished with that. They have spent the money last year. There's no provision for Black Sigatoka management in the new provisions this year. But, well, Madam Speaker, they should read the estimates, because they don't seem to know what's in it. They don't seem to know what's in it. But banana planting subsector to be developed with no attention to Black Sigatoka in the estimates seems like we're not sure what we're doing. Education and Human Resource Development, $4.8 million. Some years ago, we had a program to give tablets to all the children in school. We finished with that now? We're not giving tablets again? What is it? They never needed. $65.7 million in housing. We continue on. We still have not been able, after 17 years, to have a viable functioning house market. Health and the environment, $53 million. A little something like buses, Madam Speaker. Buses, a couple of buses to make sure that those nurses who are working late night shift and so on can go home comfortably and safely after they leave work at 11 o'clock at night or have to come to work at 11 o'clock at night from wherever they are. We're spending money, we're missing little things that matter to a lot of people. $4.6 million in tourism and urban renewal. I see an amount here for $550,000 for the yachting sector. That's all? $550,000. What are we going to do with that for the yachting sector? Information, Science and Technology, Carnago Affairs, $8 million. The Youth, Sports, Culture and Constituency Empowerment. A lot of empowerment going on, Madam Speaker. $10 million this year. $19.5 million last year. Empowerment going on. Black is white. Community and enterprise and small business development, an amount of $24.4 million. Entrepreneurs will get $5 million of that, but I'm wondering what is new now. The Prime Minister said yesterday, university graduates who have an entrepreneurial interest and they want to employ a couple of people in a venture, they will get support for that. But a lot of millions, Madam Speaker, have been going into small business development over the years. And the question is, where are the small businesses that all the millions of dollars in different constituencies are funded? What has happened to them? We expect, Madam Speaker, there'll be a full report from the Minister responsible for community enterprise, commerce, enterprise, and small business development as to the impact of all of the spending on small business and the jobs created and the economic impact. But I see also in that provision $15 million for the manufacturers. I'm told that the farmers didn't have a successful time getting the $10 million put there for them, and the hoteliers struggled to get the $15 million, so the manufacturers might be a little more lucky. And then, Madam Speaker, $130.3 million for public works. What I don't understand is how you have an area of government interest and involvement that is spending $130 million a year without any concern at all for the sustainable employment that such a spending could create. So we have 8 million in the NEP. We're spending $130 million in public works. But the public works operation that used to be a department of government is sending home people and cannot pay workers. So we have public works to do. We have people, engineers, mechanics, and so on that can be employed in a restructured and properly revamped public works. But we're shelling out $130 million. A lot of it just here and there. As we say, no bid contracts. Going. No concern about the employment levels that we can generate in an organized way from this level of spending. Madam Speaker, in order to make Dominica the best place to live, the best place to work, the best place to enjoy life, we have committed ourselves to ensure economic growth of 5 to 7% per annum, 10,000 new jobs in 5 years, a top 25 global ranking for ease of doing business within 3 years, renewable energy self-sufficiency within 3 years, an international airport within 7 years, a high-speed ferry service within 2 years. What do you mean how? Aren't you all guys putting the money together? We will spend the money for you. Put it together. Every month, put 5 million. Put the 5 million when you put the 5 million every month. We will build the airport. Make sure you put the 5 million every month. Make sure you put the 5 million every month. We will build the airport. Okay? Madam Speaker, modernized garbage management system within 6 months. National health insurance for all within 3 years, and housing solutions for all within 3 years. Madam Speaker, the continuing inadequate economic growth performance in Dominica is due largely to, one, the government's neglect of the agriculture sector, the failure to support the tourism sector with the necessary infrastructure, lack of focus on private sector-led growth, the absence of structural reforms, and a steady decline in foreign direct investment inflows, and the whole issue of incompetence of this 17-year-old administration. Madam Speaker, our agriculture. Let me say before that, the overarching theme for the sustainability of our policies is a carefully thought out energy policy which harnesses solar, wind, and hydro to substantially reduce operating costs and seriously drive investments by the private sector within the agriculture, tourism, and other business sectors. We would suspend all geothermal development activities at this time and transfer the funding secured so far to wind and hydro projects and solar in order to make Dominica renewable energy self-sufficient within 3 years at a much lower cost, and with higher levels of energy sector employment. Our agriculture plan, Madam Speaker, is tightly focused on food security, on organic and fair trade production, on increased export volumes, increased farm incomes, profits, higher levels of employment, protecting land and water resources, and mentorship for young agripreneurs. With regards to increased investments in agriculture, the 2017-2018 capital spend should be at least 50 million so that we adequately deal with irrigation systems, greenhouses, making more land available, and a comprehensive feeder road network. In addition, tax and fiscal incentives extended to the private sector to invest in agro-processing plants and other agriculture based on projects such as a chocolate factory, a coffee processing plant. We will expand the sector to include the crucial essentials oil industry, livestock and dairy, and poultry industries. We will also commit more resources to the fishing sector to secure better equipment for the fishermen and to add value through canning and drying operations. Growth within the tourism sector, Madam Speaker, continues to suffer at the expense of lack of proper air and sea access, high accommodation and related costs, and reduced competitiveness compared to regional countries. We will build an international airport. We will not talk it to death and study it to death. We will build an international airport to bring long-term relief to that sector. In the short term, we will dedicate efforts to assist the hotel and other accommodation operators to address issues of access to financing and high operating costs. It is not enough to say some money has been placed in the aid bank for hoteliers to come and borrow. This approach has failed. Instead, under UWP administration, these funds will be part of a larger incentive package made available to hoteliers without increasing their debt and operating burdens. These efforts will coincide with more resources being made available for marketing the destination and to improve the appeal of World Creole Music Festival, DIFest, Creole Jazz, etc. Initiatives in sports and health tourism will also be undertaken as part of the overall effort, engineered to yield increased occupancy, increased occupancy, increased occupancy, increased profitability, and increased employment. With the exception of a few consultations in recent years, the government has largely ignored the private sector. The United Workers' Party firmly believes that in order to break this cycle of joblessness and poverty, which we have become accustomed to in the last decade and a half, we will build a vibrant private sector. Already, we have mentioned some new opportunities within the agriculture and fishing sectors. In addition, there will be an emphasis on creating jobs linked to the green economy and to the climate change responsibility that is emerging around the globe. We will pursue a tax policy that does not seek to punish entrepreneurs, but rather encourage innovation and investment. Also, carefully focused attention will make funds available to serious entrepreneurs rather than what is currently in place, where funds for entrepreneurship and business end up financing travel and the purchase of consumer items, etc., etc. Of course, those who get the benefit obviously need it, so we're happy for them. But the businesses which can demonstrate an ability to create at least 2 new jobs, as I heard the Prime Minister saying yesterday, should be targeted with that type of assistance. Efforts to stimulate growth and new jobs within the private sector will also encourage foreign investors in order to attract FDI inflows. To this end, we are committed to creating the enabling environment, fast-tracking structural reforms, and improving the ease of doing business in our country, through which prospective investors will play their role in helping to move our country forward. Madam Speaker, I want, what's the time check there, my brother? Huh?
Check your stopwatch. Check your stopwatch.
I didn't put it on, Madam Speaker.
Oh, really?
I
didn't check the time because I thought you were going to use your stopwatch.
No, I put it on.
But
Madam Speaker, this administration...
Anyway, I have it that you have to end at something like about 12:20.
12,
No, 12:20, 24.
12:24?
12:24.
12:24. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Yes, 12:24. It's at 1:29.
Madam Speaker.
29.
Dominica continues to record massive imbalances in its trade, in the balance of trade, with imports significantly above the level of exports. And under this current leadership, exports of agricultural and manufactured goods have continued a steady decline as government has watched bananas go down the road and other manufacturing items for export in the doldrums as well. And we need to address that, and we will address it. We will boost our exports to increase jobs and higher government revenue. Our goal is to double annual export volumes to reach more than $100 million, while at the same time reducing food imports, which can easily be grown locally. In order to accelerate growth of the local economy, bold new initiatives must be undertaken in order to improve local competitiveness and spur private sector investment from its current low levels. These efforts should concentrate on improving the enabling environment for business growth, easing access to financing, infrastructure development, and comprehensive land and property reform. Indeed, the cost of doing business in Dominica is still relatively high compared to other neighboring countries. That has been identified as a key impediment to private sector-led growth initiatives. Madam Speaker, among the approaches we include to improve the ease of doing business, we will streamline the administrative process for the registration and setting up of potential or new businesses. This will apply to both local and foreign-owned concerns operating within the identified priority areas for the economy. For easier access to financing, the aid bank will be reoriented to better identify and make financing available for priority areas. Madam Speaker, there are a few things we need to do because they just need to be done. We will bring an immediate end to the worsening failure of the Dominica Labour Party government to manage garbage disposal. In the words of Dr. Irvin Pascal, quote, "This rubbish everywhere, even filling bus stops, is not only unsightly, but poses serious risks to our health and well-being. I wish to suggest we change our approach to garbage disposal and have any chance at averting an impending health epidemic and all its consequences," end of quote. Madam Speaker, we will ensure adequate garbage disposal vehicles, adequate garbage disposal containers, and dump sites for all residential and commercial areas across the island. We will encourage the use of organic waste on organic farms and backyard gardens, and we will introduce a system of paying for the recyclable waste that passes through the homes of our citizens and business operations. This will effectively open up sustainable income earning opportunities, especially for young people across the country. We will introduce a Wi-Fi enabled education network anchored at our schools across the country, wherein we establish a homework after school help portal where not only students but their parents also can participate by getting real-time tutor assistance from educators at home and abroad. That network, Madam Speaker, will also be used to prepare our students for entrance exams to international schools, colleges, universities. It will also be an adult education facility and a professional development platform to build globally competitive human resource skills and competencies, especially in agriculture, tourism, light manufacturing, renewable energy, and other growth engines of the economy. Madam Speaker, in recent times, deadly vehicular accidents have been on the rise. It is a challenge that is made even more difficult with our limited hospital facilities nationwide. We will build 2 micro-sized trauma facilities, one on the West Coast, one in the West, one in the East, so that accident victims could be urgently given emergency trauma care before being later transported to a major hospital. Madam Speaker, the expertise of Dominican medical experts like Dr. Dale Dangleben, a frontline trauma surgeon, will be engaged in this necessary initiative to help save the lives of our brothers and sisters who are involved in these increasingly dangerous vehicular and fire accidents. Madam Speaker, the United Workers' Party team, Dominica, understands the pain and the struggles of the young people growing up in Dominica over the past 17 years. We strongly recommend urgent government action, beginning in this budget year, to facilitate job creation and business opportunities, to provide and improve sports and recreational facilities, to assist in the development of youth creativity and talents, to ultimately improve the quality of life of our young people. We welcome, in that regard, the facility to be constructed at Stock Farm. But, you know, it cannot be simply about constructing a facility. Let us make sure that when we do it, it is properly resourced and it functions effectively to allow our young people to practice their skills, to develop their skills and prepare themselves for global competition. Madam Speaker, we have the money, and we will therefore provide sustainable jobs for youth across all sectors. We will provide sports and academic scholarships, which involves transparent selection criteria based on merit and need. We will diversify subject areas in primary, secondary, and tertiary schools to include technical vocational training. We will develop a comprehensive sports policy and action plan. We will provide exposure to business opportunities, technical and financial support for young people. We will provide advanced information technology and communications integration in schools and workplaces, and increase social safety netting for youth, which would give our young people facing social and academic challenges a second chance. We will provide housing, job and housing opportunities for youth in city, suburban, and rural areas. With the urgency of now, we will develop a transparent system for accessing sporting and academic scholarships based on merit. We'll prepare and implement a sports facilities development program and a training program targeting youth across the nation. We'll establish a youth village, including a state-of-the-art sound stage and video production studio, along with specialized training and recreational facilities. We will review and enhance existing entrepreneurship programs and establish business incubators in key market locations for housing and technical advice for small business growth. We will initiate a comprehensive adoption of internet communication technology at schools, government institutions, and workplaces to improve productivity and speed up services and empower our youth. We will facilitate participation of youth in local, regional, and international sporting tournaments and conferences, and we will work with educational institutions to expand curricula to include entrepreneurship studies, as well as sports management, music, dance, culture, technical, and vocational skills. For the wellness, the preservation of dignity, and the continuing pursuit of happiness for our elderly citizens, we have suggested before that it is the government's responsibility in a democracy of government of the people, by the people, for the people, to pay attention to continuous improvement in the living conditions of all citizens, especially all seniors. And so, we will protect the spending money of our retired citizens by significantly reducing the VAT on food and utilities. Additionally, incomes must be reviewed in every budget year to ensure that the elderly are able to cope with increases in the cost of living. Madam Speaker, the Margot constituency. In the constituency of Margot, Madam Speaker, our vision is to become, as we said last year, a fully self-sufficient, full employment eco-city with modern education, health, sporting, and recreational facilities. A road network that effectively connects the residential, commercial, agricultural, tourist, and recreational areas, first world water and sanitation services, 100% energy requirements from wind and solar, a minimum 4G platform for world-class ICT connectivity and functionality. Madam Speaker, for well over a decade, the people of Margot have been expecting to see adequate resources budgeted for the road network, for housing, for healthcare, for small business and village economy priorities, for one of the most progressive and productive communities in this country. Madam Speaker, a better Margot means a better Dominica. A politically victimized Margot means a Dominica operating below its capability for outstanding, sustainable growth and development. Madam Speaker, we are now hearing that even a land use plan for the Greater Margot area, funded with World Bank money and assigned to a Grenadian consultant, is being frustrated by a certain minister claiming that Cabinet did not approve the project.
The member.
Of course, Madam Speaker.
The member, excuse me. A certain minister, you're referring to a minister, certain minister. You know that's not right. Well, that's when I would have to ask you to withdraw everything. No, I'm just telling you that you made a statement. No, I turned it off. When I'm talking to you, I turn it off. I don't like crosstalk. I'm telling you that by saying that a certain minister is frustrating, you're not talking about a minister in France, are you? Or in St. Lucia? So, therefore, I'm telling that you are imputing improper motive there, and that's not right. It would appear so. Good. Thank you.
The first big issue is that the plan is for the benefit of the people of Margot. And then the Grenadian consultant now subcontracted competent Dominican professionals, Senator Isaac Baptiste and Honorable Joseph Isaac, to work with him. We cannot unite Dominica with hate and prejudice. We cannot build Dominica with partisan, political pettiness and vindictiveness. All ideas must contend, and all talents and skills must be allowed to serve. All must be allowed to eat. All shall eat. All shall eat. All shall eat. Madam Speaker, in this year's budget, an amount of $18.8 million is provided over the next 2 years for construction of a new Margaret Hospital. 14.1 million by way of a grant from the government and people of Mexico, and $4.8 million from local funds. 6.4 million will be spent in year 1 and 12.4 million will be spent in year 2. This new Margaret Hospital, Madam Speaker, is a sore point for the residents of the Northeast, from Crayfish River to Calibishi. They have suffered long and hard without a proper medical facility. And now that the money is available, I'm sure that we will hear from the minister responsible an actual plan with times, with dates for commencement and completion. Madam Speaker, there is also an amount of $1.2 million that is budgeted this year for a health center in Marigot. The people of Marigot need work to commence on both facilities no later than December of 2017. We have been running around with these issues now for too long. Madam Speaker, in this year's budget as well, the amount of $4.9 million budgeted but not spent in the last 2 budget cycles to correct the wave overtopping problem at Melville Hall has been increased now to $20 million. We need work to commence on the resolution of this decade-old problem no later than September of 2017. Remember, this is a problem that has existed for 10 years. The people have complained about it. Representation after representation has been made about it. There have been allocations in budget after budget to fix it. No money spent. We now see the highest level of money thrown at it, and we are saying it is time for the correction work to begin. We are saying it is not unreasonable to say the work should begin by September of 2017. Madam Speaker, some years ago, citizens with long-standing interest in land in the housing area at Melville Hall were promised that land reserved for them by the Housing Division would be officially allocated. This has not happened. As a result, persons willing to build are unable to do so, and in some instances, allocations agreed to have been compromised by intervening arrangements. Again, we are asking the government and the minister responsible to give urgent attention to what has become a particularly vexing matter for a number of residents of the area. A number of persons in the constituency remain anxious about a housing revolution intervention to address their deplorable housing conditions. The playing field at Concord, Madam Speaker, needs urgent attention, and the excellent sporting facility at Lyo Park, regrettably abandoned by the government, is in desperate need of rehabilitation. We need budgeted resources for small business development in Marigot as well. And as I stand here, no, it's for St. Joseph alone.
No, for him.
It's for Vacas alone. It's for Paybush alone. We need these monies, Madam Speaker. It's amazing that people who spend so much time in the parliament still don't understand what state resources mean. Yeah. They believe the state belongs to them, and because they're in government, they're the ones to spend the money on themselves and their constituents, and everybody else must gallop on. That's not the way it works. So yes, we need budgeted resources for small business development in Marigot. We need budgeted resources to rehabilitate a number of feeder roads, Barrow Tantan, Captain Bruce Windy Lodge, Marshall Road, Craig Road, Coffee Road, Tantan Pegwa Link Road. We also need budgeted resources to bring a number of village roads up to acceptable standards. The Fine Grass, Bull Hole, 6 acres, Melville Hall Link Road. The Valley Road, the North End Road, the Overgutter Road. We need a new bridge at Mantipo. We had bridges constructed on the Nicholas-Liverpool Highway all the way up to Pegwa. And then when they got to Marigot, a bridge in the center of Marigot, which obviously needs to be replaced, was ignored. That's the Mantipo Bridge. We need a new bridge there. And we need to fix the dam bridge, and we need, what's that? Thank you. Madam Speaker, I want to thank the minister.
Will you explain to them that there's no end to the end of the word you just moved?
What's that?
I said, will you explain to them there's no end?
There's no end. Yeah. It's the dam bridge. The dam bridge.
There's no end.
And I'm happy, Madam Speaker. I think that
I know Marigot quite well, you see.
Good. Madam Speaker, I think that comes out of some inspiration the Honourable Minister responsible for Trade, Energy and Employment would have picked up at a recent funeral where I was privileged to be with him as he carried the cross. Thank you, Mr. Minister. So, Madam Speaker, we need to fix that bridge, and we need speed bumps for the highway passing through Concord. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, the Dominica Labour Party's political survival strategy of building dependence on handouts from ministers of government who fancy themselves as the state is casting the shadows of a Venezuelaization of the Dominica economy that we do not wish on ourselves. We do not wish that on ourselves. And so, in the final words of this budget response, I quote a May 2017 article from the Associated Press on the background to millions of Venezuelans regularly in the streets these days, venting their anger over violent crime, crushing shortages, and an economy in shambles. I quote, "For many years, elites controlled Venezuelan politics, and the poor had little voice. The late President Hugo Chavez won elections in 1998 as a political outsider, promising to upset the old order and funnel some of the country's enormous oil wealth to the poor. Poverty rates fell sharply during his administration, and many people continue to see him as a beloved Robin Hood figure who gave them houses, free health care, better education, and a place at the table in government. Chavez was helped by the fact that when he took over the presidency, oil was trading at about $10 a barrel, and when he died in 2013, it had risen to $100 a barrel. Venezuela derives 95% of its export earnings from oil. Shortly after Chavez's death, the price of oil fell by half. That's left his hand-picked successor, Maduro, struggling. The economy is forecast to sink 8% this year, and the International Monetary Fund forecasts inflation will soar to 4 digits next year. The plunge in world oil prices has left the government owing money across the board, from foreign airlines to oil service companies. Most of the anti-poverty gains made under Chavez have been erased and people are grappling with severe food and medicine shortages, end of quote. Madam Speaker, this is a country with the largest oil reserves in the world that gave us the hundreds of millions of petro-Carib money. We will never make as much passport dollars per capita as Venezuela has made oil dollars per capita. The model this government is hell-bent on perfecting did not work for Venezuela, and it will not work for us. And so, Madam Speaker, again this year, I close with the final stanza of our national anthem. Come ye forward, sons and daughters of this gem beyond compare. Strive for honor, sons and daughters. Do the right, be firm, be fair. Toil with hearts and hands and voices. We must prosper. Song the call, in which everyone rejoices, all for each and each for all. And so, Madam Speaker, to paraphrase John Bunyan, though with much difficulty I have come hither within the last 20 hours, I do not repent the trouble I have taken. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Please, all praise and thanks to our redeeming Lord, beloved Dominica. God bless you.